And we are back. Boxing with Mannix and Mora. I'm Chris Mannix. He is the former junior middleweight champion, Sergio Mora. And Sergio, we are back in studio, which means I get a fresh look at your years-old sweatpants that you're wearing right now. You look like a normal human from the top up. From the bottom, you look homeless.
Well, listen, I wanted to match the environment. Look at the back set. Normally, we have that beautiful Staples Center or Crypto Arena background. Now we have that grimy boxing New York vibe. So I wanted to fit that East Coast bad boy vibe, you know?
You had absolutely no idea where we were going when I picked you up this morning.
No,
you picked me up today.
No, I didn't. That, and I didn't pick up my dry clean, I'll be honest with you.
All right. We got a lot to get into on this show. We're going to talk about a big move by Teofimo Lopez. We're going to get into Canelo against Crawford, which is inching closer towards that finish line. We've got Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney back in action in separate fights. We've got Claressa Shields out there in a couple of weeks. We'll be looking for a big fight in 2025. Naoya Inoue back in action this weekend. And Sergio, the fight that we are going to be at on Saturday, Diego Pacheco against Steven Nelson, a battle of two undefeated 168-pounders. And I know you are very anxious to get back to Las Vegas. You already have a full itinerary for Las Vegas. Not even a joke. I know you have every hour accounted for when you land in Vegas.
You know me well, Chris Mannix. Yep, we got dinner at Peter Luger's. We got tickets to the Killers. Of course, the roulette table is calling my name.
Yes.
And yeah, man, I think we're going to catch a couple of shows. Maybe the Elvis imitation Elvis guy is going to go out there, or the Prince cover band, Purple Rain. Yeah, we're set. Oh, and of course, the fight.
Follow Sergio's Instagram account for terrible pictures of food during the course of this next week. All right, Sergio, let's talk about the news that Turki Al-Sheikh dropped on Monday. After announcing plans to put on a card co-headlined by Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney in separate fights, Turki has followed through, revealing that Ryan Garcia is signed to face former 140-pound champion Rolly Romero, and Devin Haney will face former unified 140-pound champ Jose Ramirez. As a sweetener, Turki added that a heavyweight fight between Martin Bakole and Efe Ajagba will also be on that show. So let's start at the top of the bill there, Sergio. Ryan, Devin, separate fights. Do you like these choices of opponents?
I do like them, and of course, I would like to see Ryan Garcia with Pitbull. That would have been a more attractive fight, not only to Mexican fans, but all around, it would have been a more intriguing fight. Because Rolly Romero's been knocked out, and when it comes to Pitbull, you know that he gives everyone hell. Against Rayo Valenzuela, I think it was the wrong style matchup, but Valenzuela just had a perfect game plan, man. They executed to perfection. So I applaud Robert Garcia, and I applaud Rayo Valenzuela for doing what he did with Pitbull. But not that many people do that to Isaac Cruz, all right? So that fight would have been intriguing, and it would have been the right style matchup for Pitbull. He fights taller fighters better. But Rolly Romero, we know he's on the downside. He's shell-shocked. In his last fight that we called, it wasn't the gunslinger, the Ricardo Mayorga we're accustomed to seeing, the guy that goes out and tries to get the knockout. He was a little shook, you know. So Rolly Romero is a good opponent for Ryan Garcia to stay busy. It's going to be a hell of a press conference tour. It's going to be.
Well, isn't that the point of all this? Like, we're not looking for the most dangerous opponents for Ryan and
We're
Devin.
looking for good fights, competitive fights.
Yeah, I want credible fights that have, outcomes I can expect. I mean, I'm not anxious to see an upset on this card. That's why I think these choices are perfect. And I'll start with Romero, because I think Romero is 100 times better as an opponent for this fight than Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull Cruz, yes, is a better fighter. He's a better fighter. I'm going to give you that. But again, you're not looking for the very best opponent for Ryan Garcia in his first fight in what will be over a year. This is supposed to be a comeback fight of sorts for Ryan Garcia. And Rolly, we know, can sell a fight. He was rumored to face Ryan early last year before Ryan moved on to Devin Haney. He's got some pop in him, so he's always a little bit dangerous. But most importantly, for this context, he's a little bit chinny, Sergio. Or rather,
there you go. That's
he's
what I'm
a lot
talking
chinny.
about.
He's a lot chinny. He got starched by Gervonta Davis. He got knocked out by Pitbull Cruz. There is no scenario where I can see Rolly Romero going 10 rounds, 12 rounds, whatever it is, with Ryan Garcia.
Well, if that's the case, I would have preferred Rolly Romero against Haney, because both of them are a little bit chinny. And I would like Ramirez, who's never been stopped, against Ryan Garcia. I think if he would have switched that around, personally.
But you're completely missing the point in all this. Like, you are looking for competitive fights. Nobody's looking for that.
Nobody's looking for
everybody
competitive
wants
matchups.
these two guys to be in fun fights, credible fights, but fights that they're going to win so we can move on to the main event, so we can get to Ryan versus Devin part 2. How would you feel if Ryan, in his first fight back, goes up against Pitbull, because Pitbull is a handful, he winds up outworking him and beats him over 12 rounds? Would you feel good about that?
Of course not. But see, you're the same guy that always talks about that I'm protecting fighters and, wrong style matchups, bad matchmaking.
Totally different set of circumstances.
Okay, now you're doing the opposite. Now you want the tougher fight, the less tough fight for the opponent. I want the tougher fight. I think Garcia has a lot to prove, and he's gonna he's gonna
have to prove it in October against Devin Haney.
Look, Rolly Romero is not what he was. It would have been before the Tank fight, I would have been all on board for this fight. But we've seen this kid get knocked out twice. Bad. I mean, so
which is the point.
And in his last fight against Jaimes, I believe his name was, he didn't look. He just looked like he looked like an older, beaten fighter that's afraid to get punched. And Ryan Garcia, we know that he has speed, he has power. And Pitbull Cruz, even though he's coming off a loss, he's never been stopped. And he has a cement head and style matchup. It would have been more intriguing, more promotable fight.
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
You're not going to sit there and say Pitbull's a more promotable fight. Pitbull says nothing. Pitbull doesn't promote fights. Yeah, he's got some more credibility, but it's not like he's this unbeaten fighter as well. He lost to Gervonta Davis. He lost to Rayo Valenzuela. Let's not act like he's, worthy of this challenge, deserving of this challenge. Not to mention, he's got a fight coming up in February. We don't know what's going to happen in this fight coming up February 1st. So Rolly's out there. Rolly's coming off a win. I agree with you. It wasn't a very good win. But Rolly, what we want from Rolly is to be the Rolly Romero that sells a fight. The same guy that helped prop up that Gervonta Davis fight a few years ago. We want him to do that all over again. Then he gets in the ring. He'll throw some punches wildly. And then Ryan will Francisco Fonseca him at some point. That's what he's going to do.
All right. Well, look, if that's the game plan, if that's what's going to be the forecasting, that's exactly what's going to happen. Look, the thing about Rolly Romero is he does sell a fight. He's fun to listen to. His gibberish, the things that comes out of his mouth, it sounds like he's always high. He talks in slow motion, but he's pretty witty. And he has power, so it's always exciting whenever you're dealing
he's
with
going to
a
go
fighter
for it
that,
at some point.
That
He'll throw some punches.
But in his last fight, like I'm telling you, he didn't throw those. He wasn't slinging that power with confidence, and I didn't like the look in his face. He wasn't coming forward. He was in the back foot a little bit more. There was no confidence in him. And when a power puncher, a susceptible power puncher, doesn't have that willing to exchange, then you're out. Because you didn't have the polished skill to get from the get-go. You were a gunslinger. You're a Ricardo Mayorga type, and once you don't want to start throwing those shots like that, you're not a fun fighter to watch anymore.
I wouldn't even put on Mayorga's level. Mayorga at least had some quality wins. Rolly at this point does not have any quality wins.
He's never had quality wins, but he's a hard-punching guy, could sell a fight. And he always comes to fight. I mean, you got to give that to Romero. He comes to fight. He looks for the knockout. And, when he got knocked out, they were pretty bad. But a fighter can only get knocked out like that a certain amount of time.
He won his title
out the window
in a shaky way against Ishmael Barroso. We all remember what happened in that fight. Look, as far as matchmaking goes, I give this an A+ because it's a credible opponent, a recent former champion for Ryan to fight, coming off a long layoff, and a fight that, unless something wild happens, we know the outcome is going to be positive for Ryan Garcia and will be spectacular. It will build some momentum going into that next fight. Now, the other fight could potentially be more competitive. Jose Ramirez is a former unified champion at 140. He'll be moving up in weight for this fight. So will Devin Haney. So both these guys will be 140-pounders jumping up to 147. The last we saw of Ramirez, though, Sergio, over in Saudi Arabia at Latino night, he did not look good at all. He was outboxed by Arnold Barboza. Just couldn't let his hands go in that fight. Do you think that was a pretty clear sign that Ramirez has lost a couple of steps?
Yes, and not only that, but in his last fight that we called with Barthélemy, even though he won that, I didn't like the way he reacted when he got punched either. There was no confidence in his aggression and his volume punching like he normally does. That's what made him a U.S. Olympian. That's what made him a unified champion. He was like cut from that Mexican style but that polished Mexican style, where he can go in and out punch guys and with timing and aggression and technique, but he also wasn't getting hit with big shots. Ramirez, he's kind of a confusing fighter because he hasn't been knocked out. He just got beat up with Josh Taylor, but he hasn't really been knocked out. But he already lost that edge. I don't see that edge in his eye.
Inactivity's killed him. Inactivity's killed him the last few years.
Yeah, but he hasn't been knocked out. Inactivity kills fighters. Yes, it kills careers. Yeah, but that eye of the tiger is not there with Ramirez. I haven't seen it. I didn't see it with Barthélemy when he fought Barthélemy, and I definitely didn't see it in his last fight. And with Haney, he's gonna need something because Haney's gonna keep him at the end of that jab. If Barboza was able to handily beat Ramirez, Haney's going to do it easier. Haney's going to do it a lot easier. So if Ramirez is not going to take no chances, this is the reason I'd much rather have seen Ramirez fight Ryan Garcia and flip it over, an Isaac Cruz versus a Haney. That would have been a tremendous fight. Or even a Romero against Haney, because Romero...
Never in a million years would you put Isaac Cruz in with Devin Haney.
Okay, even
when
Romero,
you know what's coming
Romero
next.
with Haney would have been intriguing too. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
Less so, because Romero is, even against a fighter like Romero, I don't know that Devin has the pop to get him out of there. We know that Ryan Garcia does. Ryan Garcia has that one-punch knockout, and if Ryan is at the top of the bill, that has the potential to be a spectacular moment that would cap the night. I agree with everything you said about Ramirez. I think he has been on some level of decline really since, the Josh Taylor fight for sure. The best of Ramirez was probably 2019 when he beat Mo Hooker. That was probably the very best that we saw of him, becoming a unified champion at 140. Since then, he's had some decent fights. He's had some decent wins. But I agree with you. 2 fights earlier, it took him a long time to get Bartholomew out of there. And then the last fight, he just, look, against a guy like Barboza, who's not a big puncher, he couldn't let his hands go. And I was sitting there ringside with you watching it, wondering when he keeps following Barboza around the ring, but not letting his hands go.
A lot of that was Barboza. Barboza's footwork was really nice.
I give him credit for that, but Sergio, at the same time, if you've got a guy in front of you that is not a big puncher, isn't that an opportunity to let your hands go?
He wasn't letting his hands go for a while, and inactivity does that to you. It makes you start second guessing your ability. And he has been plagued by a lot of inactivity. I just don't think Ramirez made some good money. He lives in a part of California, in the fields over there where, that money could be stretched a long way. And I think he has a lot of ambitions outside of boxing. I think he's a family man. So I just think boxing
got a bunch of kids, yeah.
And I think boxing has taken a back seat to all his ambitions. And this is a sport where it's very jealous, man. I mean, it's a very jealous sport. You have to have it at your forefront, your main ambition, or else it's going to turn on you. And I think it's slowly turning on Ramirez. Even though he hasn't been knocked out or beaten brutally, he just doesn't have the hunger. It's kind of a job now for Ramirez.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I do give Ramirez a better chance of beating Haney than I do ROLLY of beating Ryan, but marginally. I think Devin, as long as that Ryan win, a Ryan no contest, whatever you want to call it, didn't take enough out of him. I think he's got more left in the tank to win a fight like that. All right, let's talk about Teofimo Lopez, the champion at 140, who revealed a few things this week. First, he says he is in discussions to face Richardson Hitchens for a unified title at 140 pounds. Leading those discussions will be his new advisory team of Mike Borreo and your good pal, Sergio, Keith Conley, who even now you want to represent you in what's left of your career. Conley, SI's manager of the year for his work this past year. Also, by the way, the manager of Richardson Hitchens. So what do you think of all these moves that Teofimo has made this week?
Oh, first of all, let's give credit to Keith Conley. He's keeping it in-house, so he's going to get a percentage from both them fighters.
Yeah, but he hates making fights with his guys.
It doesn't matter, man, when it's for a big fight like that against two.
He did. Look, he made that fight with Danny Jacobs and Sergey Derevyanchenko. Those are both his guys.
And both of them got career-high payday, so shout out to Keith Conley, who will represent me if I come out of retirement. But anyway, yeah, 2 Brooklyn bad boys, man. Give it to me. Teofimo Lopez, Brooklyn bad boy, and Richardson Hitchens, who's on top of his game, man. When he's firing on cylinders and he's popping that jab and the confidence he got in Puerto Rico winning a world title, man, that would be an absolute great fight and a promotable fight. Both them dudes got big mouths. Both of them are champions now. I'm all on board in that fight. It's going to be an East Coast popular fight. They can sell that fight easily, man. I mean, they'll promote itself. And stylistically, it'll be an interesting fight because we haven't seen Hitchens react to really getting in a physical fight. Teofimo will get him in a physical fight. Teofimo's a physical fighter. He's athletically physical. That's the thing, though. So he can be on the back foot. He can pot shot you. He He can be tricky with his defense. Teofimo's a hell of a fighter. And when motivated, very hard to beat. Hitchens is not on Teofimo's level, but stylistically, it's an intriguing fight. I'm all on board for that fight. So if the manager of the year, Keith Conley, gets it done, and whoever that other guy's name is, I'm on board. Absolutely.
Mike Barreo, you've seen Mike Barreo around a bunch. Okay. He's managed a bunch of guys. Let's start with the managerial move. I do like it because I think it gives Teofimo some direction. He's got some professionals now that are looking out for his individual interest. It did set up my antenna when it comes to his future with Top Rank. Keith Conley famously got Edgar Berlanga out of his contract with Top Rank, signed that deal with Matchroom, which eventually led to his showdown with Canelo. Now, I've been told that the plan right now is not to extract Teofimo from that Top Rank deal because it doesn't really matter. Like if Turki Al-Sheikh gets involved and wants Teofimo in a big fight, it doesn't really matter what promotional umbrella that they're under. These fights, they tend to get done. Now, the Hitchens fight is interesting. I do think that Keith would try to make this fight because it is a big enough fight for both these guys. He won't like it because, again, he doesn't like doing this with these guys, but I think he'd do it. I can agree with you to an extent that Hitchens has not proven that he's on Teofimo's level, but to quote one of my favorite lines from Rocky II, or at least paraphrase it, for Teofimo, Hitchens is all wrong for you, baby. He's all wrong for you. Look at the guys that Teofimo has struggled against the last couple of years. You're talking about Sandor Martin, who he could have lost to, and Jermaine Ortiz, who he barely squeaked by. These were boxers who moved. Richard Hitchens is a better boxer than both Sandor Martin and Jermaine Ortiz. He's bigger, he's longer, he's stronger, and going into a fight against Teofimo, he won't have to worry about that IBF rehydration clause that's caused him so many problems because when you have a unification fight, that rehydration clause goes out the window. So he's going to come in a lot bigger and a lot stronger and a lot healthier than he used to be. I can just see a scenario where Hitchens frustrates the hell out of Teofimo because he just fights this very disciplined 1-2 jab, right hand style. And that's the kind of stuff that's given Teofimo some problems in the past. You come at Teofimo like Lomachenko did, like Josh Taylor did, he can eat you for lunch. If you just box him from the outside, he has still not shown that he's able to handle that style.
I'm glad that I'm finally teaching you stuff here, Chris Mannix.
You taking credit for this now?
I'm taking credit for what you just said because you're right. And all these years that I've been working with you, you've always made fun of me. You've always reacted that, oh, you don't want the best to fight the best. You don't want two guys at the top of their level that stylistically you're always defending them. Yeah, no, you're right about Hitchens being the wrong style matchup, but he's a champion now. He's a world champion now. Teofimo wants that championship, and there are two Brooklyn guys, like I said. It's promotable. They have the same manager. So the stars are aligned for that tough fight to be put together. Yes, stylistically, it doesn't make sense, but fuck stylistically, because we're not talking about that no more. We're talking about two championship fighters that could be promotable, and it'll be a hell of a fight stylistically. Yes, it's not a good style matchup for Teofimo, but look, man, there's a lot of fights that have been made recently where I tell you, that was bad matchmaking.
Yeah, and they're all like Riyadh season fights because the money's so big. And then you look at Jared Anderson, and then
you're always on the flip side of that. Now you don't want the best fight bad. Now you're basically saying you're agreeing with me. Okay, so
wait, I'm the one that always says best against best. You're the one that wants fights to marinate forever.
Yes, and now you don't want Teofimo against Hitchens. Hitchens is a world champion.
I say you do it.
If Hitchens didn't have that title, that strap, then I would say yeah. Why are you going to fight this kid? He's going to be difficult. He has a 74-inch reach. I mean, he has a long reach for a junior welterweight, and Teofimo's a little smaller. So if he didn't have that strap around his waist, then I would say Teofimo doesn't need him. But now he brings something to the table, and it's worth the risk. And the money will be there because Keith Conley gets his guys paid. It's going to be in their backyard. It's going to be a New York-type fight. All the risk matches the reward. I like this fight. I hope it gets made. And stylistically, it will be a headache. But Teofimo's smart enough to bring a game plan to break through that headache.
All I was saying was that there's going to be this perception that Teofimo is a big favorite. In fact, I bet when the odds come out for Teofimo against Hitchens, he's 3-1.
No
maybe.
way.
Yeah, I think the odds makers will make him a big favorite.
Way.
Yes, they will. And if they do, I'm putting all my money on Hitchens on that one. If he's a big underdog, I'm putting all my money on him because I think he has the potential to outbox Teofimo. And I think especially since there's no rehydration clause. Because every time we talk about Hitchens, it invariably comes back. He's a really big guy, and he doesn't want to cut down and then have to limit how much he comes back up. If he doesn't have to worry about that, he's going to be a better fighter. And I think he's going to give Teofimo a world of problems on fight night.
I think bookies, when they look at a fighter, a talented fighter like Teofimo Lopez, they can never rely on how he's going to take this camp, how he's going to take this fighter serious or not, if he's going to be prepared for that style matchup. I think bookies have a hard time really gauging where a fighter's mentality is at. They can go off of what they see and how they performed in the last fight, how they performed against a style like that, but they can never really trust the mindset, the character, the temperament of a person. And Teofimo's, man, Teofimo's just, that's who you got there. Either you got someone that's one of the best fighters in the world when he has his mind straight, or someone that you just can't rely on, like when he fought Cambosis and other guys where he hasn't looked good. So, yeah, I think bookies will have a hard time really making him a real big favorite.
All right, let's talk about Canelo Alvarez, who is inching closer and closer to this showdown with Terence Crawford. All signs point to Canelo and Crawford meeting at some point in September, probably around that Mexican Independence Day weekend. Still unclear if these guys take an interim fight in between. There's been some talk about Canelo trying to get undisputed again by facing William Skull. Crawford, he's been known to fight off long layoffs, so maybe he won't want to take an interim fight, especially if he's going to have to go up and wait and fight somebody that might be maybe more dangerous than who Canelo would face. But it sounds like Crawford is willing to face Canelo at 168, no rehydration clause. He's been expressing a lot of confidence on social media of late, Sergio, that he can win this fight. What do you think of Crawford's chances of winning a fight like this?
They will be solid. And I think it's smart for Crawford not to really concentrate on the weight. No matter how heavy Canelo comes into the fight, I think that's going to work not against Canelo because he's already accustomed to fighting up to light heavyweight, but it's not going to make a difference against a guy like Crawford. Crawford doesn't rely on size. He relies on accuracy. He relies on his fight IQ. He relies on switching styles, how long he is, how strong he is. He's just an assassin with a chip on his shoulder that doesn't rely on size. So I think it will be a detriment for a pound-for-pound beautiful boxer puncher like Crawford to really focus on size and massing up and bulking up. That's not going to do you good against Canelo. Canelo is, yes, a bigger fighter, but he's shorter. You know, and he's stocky and he's powerful, yes, but so is Crawford. I think that fight would be better if Crawford could stay around the 154 level and Canelo could go up to 170s or 180s like he normally does. It's not going to make a difference. It really doesn't make a difference. You know, whenever you have a fighter like Terence Crawford who relies on breaking down opponents systematically, Crawford doesn't want to knock out punch anybody. He systematically breaks down guys and he does it beautifully. Against Canelo, he's going to have to do the exact same thing. He's not going to knock out Canelo. He's not even going to hurt Canelo, but he could pot shot him. He could frustrate him. He can do a little bit of what Bivol done, and he could sprinkle in some Crawford magic in there, and I could see Crawford having a lot of success. Once that fight gets physical, which it will get physical at one point, that's where we're going to see where Canelo, the bigger natural fighter, can he hurt him? Can he rock him? Every time he hits him, how's Crawford going to react? I mean, it's a beautiful fight. It's going to be an all-time great matchup that you would have to kind of edge out to Canelo just because of his greatness. But Crawford, man, we're watching greatness as well. We're watching all-time greatness with both these guys. So you can't count out Crawford.
I admire Crawford for wanting this challenge. I know he's going to be well compensated for it, but he very easily could have been decently compensated to fight guys at 154, to fight someone like Keith Thurman, maybe, who still has something of a name in boxing, maybe gotten his record to like 51-0 or whatever it may be, and retire after that. He's daring to be great in a fight that he's going to be, I think, a pretty heavy underdog in. My problem in assessing this fight is it's just hard for me to see a true path to victory for Terence Crawford. All the things you talked about, Crawford breaking guys down systematically, beating them down, it's all true. But it was all done at such light weights, 135, 140, 147. I want to throw some numbers at you that I was looking up from his last two fights. Against Errol Spence, Crawford landed 98 power punches in that fight through 8+ rounds, right? Knocked him out in the 9th. 60% of his power shots landed that fight. Incredible number for Terence Crawford. He took the fight to Spence
That was a beatdown.
and beat him down. Now, you fast forward to his next fight against Madrimov. In 12 rounds against Madrimov, Crawford landed 55 punches, according to CompuBox. His connect rate dropped to 26%. He was more cautious in that fight. I think he's going to be even more cautious against Canelo Alvarez.
No, because Canelo's flat-footed fighter. Madrimov is a fleet-footed fighter. He can fight from both stances. He can actually... Madrimov is hard to look good against. Not only because of his footwork, you have to respect his power. You have to respect his ring IQ. Madrimov is...
You don't have to respect Canelo's power, Canelo's ring IQ?
Yeah, but not his footwork. Canelo has zero footwork.
Yeah, but he counters you to hell.
Yeah,
That is his...
Mannix, you're talking to the boxer and you're trying to teach the boxer. Listen up and be quiet.
Okay.
When you have flat feet, then you can move around those flat feet. You could flank these guys. And Crawford could do it from the left-handed stance or the right-handed stance. He has long arms. So he has longer arms than Canelo. I think he's quicker than Canelo. I think he knows how to fight from both stances better than Canelo. He has faster feet than Canelo. Yes, Canelo has everything else. The experience, the power, even the head movement. I think Canelo's head movement has become exceptional. He takes a better shot. The chin's going to be on Canelo's side. Everything's going to be on Canelo's side. But as far as like the things that you need to beat a guy like Canelo, Crawford has that. Crawford will frustrate Canelo. I could see him doing well. How he takes that power is another story. That's the only thing that's kind of like the what if Crawford gets hit with a big shot, how's he going to react? But up until then, Crawford he can match him with a lot of speed and a lot of technique.
Yeah, but you didn't see the same power, speed, technique against Madrimov.
Madrimov has footwork.
Right. I know you keep saying that, and that's great. But the attributes that Canelo has are just as dangerous to Terence Crawford. What have we seen from all the opponents Canelo has faced from 160 on up? They try to beat him with the jab. Like Caleb Smith tried to beat him with the jab. Caleb Plant tried to beat him with the jab. The guys that have faced Canelo, the only guys that have faced Canelo that let their hands go, it's like Gennady Golovkin is certainly one, and that maybe is kind of it, right? Like you've got to be willing to exchange with Canelo.
No, you're wrong.
To beat him, you do. That's a fact.
You're wrong. Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Beeble, the other one that did it.
Floyd Mayweather Jr. did not exchange with him.
Canelo was like 12. He
did
was
not
like 12
exchange
years
with
old
him.
at that point.
Austin Trout, I know I'm going back in time, but Austin Trout did not exchange with Floyd Mayweather. You don't need to exchange with him. You can't let him plant his heavy feet because he has explosive hands. He has an explosive
But you
upper
have
body.
to let your right hand go to beat him. You can't jab him to death. You are not going to win a decision against Canelo. Sergey Kovalev was at what point was he 2 weight classes heavier, threw 1,000,000 jabs in that fight. Eventually it caught up to him. You cannot just jab your way to success against Canelo. And I don't see Crawford letting the right hand go for the exact same reason, Sergio, that other fighters wouldn't do it, because they know they're going to get countered.
Caleb Plant was doing an exceptional job with that jab.
He was down pretty high. I'm not trying to knock Caleb Plant, but he was down.
He had footwork. You need footwork against Canelo, all right? So look, if you're going to beat Canelo,
you keep saying
you need
exceptional
footwork.
job. Like he was down the scorecards and got knocked out. I'm not trying to knock Caleb Plant, but nobody's coming close to beating this guy unless your name is Gennady Golovkin or Dmitry Bivol. Unless you are true top 10 in your prime, same weight class guys as Canelo Alvarez.
Okay, scratch exceptional. Caleb Plant was doing a damn good job against Canelo, okay? And it required the jab.
Shout out Caleb Plant. We want to see Caleb against Edgar Berlanga, just to be clear on that one.
Oh, I would love that fight. Absolutely. But he had a jab. He had footwork. He had defense. He had a game plan, and he almost executed it all the way to the end, but he got knocked out in the 11th. Because that's what happens. You have to fight off a guy like Canelo. You can't just be, boxing and moving around. It's going to catch up to you. This guy is slowly breaking you down. Even though it's not physical, he's slowly cutting off the ring, getting closer and closer to big shots. That's what Canelo does, man. And he has 36 minutes to execute that game plan. So, yes, you have to get his respect somehow. The jab is not enough. Dmitry Bivol, he showed in flashes of combinations, and he just frustrated Canelo with footwork, the jab, and combinations, the right hand included. So
Dmitry Bivol let his hands go against Canelo.
And Crawford is a type of mean-spirited fighter where he can have a game plan, but there's going to come a time in that fight where he's going to exchange with Canelo. He's going to exchange with Canelo. He's going to try to hurt Canelo. He will throw that right hand. He will throw that left hand from both stances. Crawford's a mean dude, man. All right,
Going
so this
up
wouldn't
14
be
pounds.
This is not going to be a one-sided fight. That's all I can promise you.
I don't think it'd be a one-sided fight, but like
and it
is
won't be
8-4?
and it won't be heavy odds either. I don't think Canelo's more than a 3-1 favorite in that fight.
14 pounds. That's a lot. At 37 years old.
Weight doesn't matter with that style matchup. I'll give you an example.
Didn't work for Jermell Charlo.
I'll give you an example of my career real quick. In my last fight against Alfredo Angulo, of a heavy-handed, strong Mexican with slow-ass feet, he came in at 168 pounds. My trainer told me, "Hey, man, I don't want you to come in heavy for this fight." I weighed 161. You know, he was a lot heavier, a lot bigger than me. I just moved around. I knew I wasn't going to exchange with him. I was going to fight my fight, and my fight was bouncing on my feet. You know, so those extra 7 pounds that I gained, that I let him have those pounds. They didn't really matter. I think it's the same thing with Crawford and Canelo. Those extra pounds won't matter when you're dealing with an assassin and a pound for pound great like Bud Crawford.
There you have it, folks. If you want a preview of
Stop! I knew I shouldn't have brought up
Canelo
that.
Crawford,
I knew I shouldn't have brought up my
back
own.
and watch Angulo Mora. There you go.
It was a good fight, actually.
Sergio, so a couple of months ago, we made Amantes Stanionis the first member of the Sergio Mora Mount Rushmore of bad business decision. This was after Stanionis agreed to face Shakram Giasov instead of trying to make a unification fight against Boots Ennis. It turns out he is not. He's going to have his face removed from that Mount Rushmore, chiseled away.
If only I can have my memories and face removed of that bad business decision.
So we are going to get Amantes Stanionis against Boots Ennis, a press conference tentatively scheduled for Friday in Los Angeles. The fight going to take place in mid-April in Atlantic City, and it will give Boots Ennis the fight that he has been looking for, a unification fight, a chance to win a world title in the ring, which is what he says he's always wanted. That IBF title of his, he was elevated after Terence Crawford declined to face him. Start with Boots. Does this kind of vindicate, in a way, his decision not to face Virgil Ortiz back in February?
I would give, maybe not vindicate, maybe not totally 100% clear his name, but it would do enough to say, no, that's good. I'll take that. Stanionis is undefeated, tricky fighter, strong, long amateur pedigree, hard to hit, respectable around, well respected around the boxing, community and critics. So that's an excellent fight. Anytime you're dealing with a fighter like that brings a resume, brings an undefeated record. No one's really looked good against Stanionis, and Boots didn't look good against Chukadzian. That's what you see, Chukadzian, and when it comes to fighters like this, like Stanionis, Chukadzian, and many others that have that European, that Eastern European background, it's hard to look good against these guys because they know how to fight. They're strong enough to hurt you, but they have good enough feet to outbox you. So it's hard to really pin down who are you fighting. Are you fighting a puncher? Are you fighting a boxer? Are you fighting a little bit of both? Are you fighting a guy that's going to want to take the fight forward? Stanionis brings a little bit of that. Tricky fight. So if you're going from a fight where you didn't look great against Chukadzian into another fighter that can make you look bad, it's a ballsy matchmaking. But respectable.
He had to do it, though.
No, he had to
do it. He had to do it. I mean, I think this salvages Boots' reputation to a degree. I still think
not if he looks bad against Stanionis.
Right, but like the making of this fight anyway. We don't know what's going to look like against Stanionis. And I actually think he's going to look really good against Stanionis. I think Stanionis has got a whole host of other issues, not the least of which is inactivity. He's fought like one time in the last 4 years. Like that's a problem for him. Boots took a lot of heat, and in my opinion, he deserved a lot of that heat. He was offered a pile of money to face Virgil Ortiz, move up in weight. He didn't take it. And there's really no good reason not to take it. He says he wanted to fight a unification fight, wanted to win a title in the ring. Okay, now he's getting that opportunity. And once he does, hopefully that means he'll move up in weight and chase bigger challenges at 154. So I think it salvages things for now for Boots. Now, if you're right, and if Stanionis looks great against him and beats him, then the whole thing is a catastrophe. The last 6 months have been a disaster. But for right now, the chance to fight for 2 belts at 147, maybe give yourself some more momentum going up to 154. I think it's good. And I actually think, Sergio, I think you're going to see the best of Boots in this fight. I think there is something to this idea of like, hey, I was supposed to face Cody Crowley in what was not an anticipated fight, but a good fight. He bows out. I got to face Avanesian. Maybe I don't train quite as hard. Also coming off a layoff, going to that Avanesian fight. And then nobody wanted him to fight Chikadzian, the least of which was Boots Ennis. Like Chikadzian, just a year and a half earlier, had looked terrible against him in a one-sided decision loss. I'm not giving him a pass for how he looks in these fights, but I do believe he's going to look really good in this next fight.
He better look good, because if he wants to be a star, and we know that he has the potential to be a star. I mean, we've seen him pack the house in Philly. He has everything you need to be a great fighter, a great boxer, now that he's a champion. But now you need the names on your resume. That's the one thing that Boots was missing. You need to do it against other champions. And a big, step forward would have been, a world championship caliber fighter like Virgil. Even though he hasn't picked up a real major strap, he's still a top dog. I like to see these fighters, fight guys like this, like Boachuk's. Boachuk's another guy that no one wants to fight. And look, Virgil fought him. It was a great fight of the year type guy. This is the type of fighter that Ennis is going to face. One of these guys that can make it a tough fight, a fight of the year candidate, because they bring a lot to the table and they don't have the opportunity to fight on the big stage. And finally, they get this opportunity.
Good fight for Stanionis. Much better fight for him than Giasov. Gives him a chance to win a unified championship. I just think you're going to get a really good performance from Boots Ennis in April. A couple fights happening this weekend. Let's start over in Japan. Naoya Inoue is back finally. He will take on Yi Jun Kim, who is a late replacement after Sam Goodman was forced to pull out for the second time against Inoue. With all due respect to Yi Jun Kim, I don't expect this fight to go very far. Kim does not have a good resume. I think this is going to be a pretty quick knockout for Naoya Inoue, which raises the question, has he done everything he has to do now at 122 pounds? Should he look up in weight at someone like Nick Ball, who's starting to build some momentum for himself at 126? Or would you rather him stay at 122 for a couple more fights?
It's not up to the monster Inoue to be moving up to look for challenges. Challenges need to look for him. So he needs to stay where he's been comfortable. He's already moved up 4 divisions. He started at 108. So the monster's doing his job. You're just going to be, climbing higher and higher challenges and higher and bigger fighters until you look bad against a bigger fighter, stronger fighter that you can't hurt. I'm not saying that he can't hurt guys at 126. I'm sure he can. He's a great fighter, all-time great, explosive power, that Manny Pacquiao type power, and he does it behind fast feet where it's unexpected. But there's no rush. If anything, he should probably go down. He go back down to 118 and fight a monster Japanese showdown against Junto Nakatani.
Why should the undisputed champion at 122 go back to 118 to fight a guy with one belt?
Because it will be a huge fight in Japan.
So bring Nakatani up. He's a big guy.
Or you can do that.
That's the whole point.
Look, this is what but not move up. To answer your question, I wouldn't move up.
Yeah.
You're the top dog. You're one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound. They need to come to you. They need to gravitate around your orbit system, Chris Mannix.
Why are you talking in that accent all of a sudden? Why do you get all cheech when you do this?
I got into my Neil deGrasse Tyson astrophysical way. All right, so let them gravitate into your orbit zone and don't let them pull you away just because of the mass of their popularity.
Yeah, and I don't think Nick Ball's a big enough fight to lure him up there. Like if Gervonta Davis was sitting at 126, I'd say, yeah, go get him. Like that's a major fight. I'm actually more interested in Nick Ball against Rafael Espinoza because I think it's the shortest 126-pound champion against the tallest. Espinoza's like 6 feet out there or something like that. He's a big dude. So that would kind of be a fun style matchup at 126 and probably help the winner of that fight build towards an Inoue fight. I'm fine with him staying at 122. I am done with these world title defenses. Like, I don't need to see Inoue rescheduled against Sam Goodman. I don't even need to see Inoue fight MJ Akhmadaliev.
Why not?
Because I don't need to see it. I don't care.
Why not?
Because there are 2 big fights out there for Inoue. One is Nakatani, which is like the Super Bowl over in Japan. That's a huge fight. Nakatani, he's got 1 belt at 118. He's fighting in February. What are we waiting for? Like why do we need to let that fight marinate anymore?
So you agree with me, Nakatani?
Nakatani moving up. Nakatani goes up to 122 and fights for all of Inoue's belts, or 3 of the belts. Like Akhmadaliev's got a belt. If Inoue has to vacate one, who gives a damn? Who cares if he is a 3-belt champion and not a 4-belt champion? The Nakatani fight is where it's at. That is the biggest money fight for Inoue, and it's a mega event over in Japan. And after that, Sergio, Bam Rodriguez. Bring on Bam Rodriguez. The end of 2025 or the start of 2026. Inoue versus Bam. We know Bam's going to return at some point in the next few weeks, few months, whatever it may be. When he does, he gets one win, maybe another win. And the end of the year, hey, let's get that fight to happen. Let's make big things happen in boxing. Let's make big fights happen. I don't want to see Inoue in title defenses. I'm over it. 2024 was the year of Inoue title defenses. This year has got to be the year of bigger fights.
Just when I think you're breaking through to the other side of boxing wisdom, you go and throw some dumb shit like this. No, I already told you he's too big. Bam is not big enough to fight Inoue.
I'll let you finish, but this is what I love. Terence Crawford can go up 14 pounds to fight Canelo Alvarez, but Bam Rodriguez can't go 7 pounds and fight Inoue. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Bam, a top 5 pound for pound guy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense.
It's just way too big. Way too big.
Way too big, and Crawford's not.
Crawford has proved to be but first of all, Crawford's a lot taller. He has longer arms.
Bam's a pretty big guy.
He could feel. He's short. He's a short,
he's
stocky
long,
guy.
You know.
So his body frame's not going to carry.
Inoue started at 108.
He did, but he's carrying that weight a lot nicer. You know, he distributes his weight a lot nicer. And you can't fit every square into a, what's that saying, that analogy, every
round peg, square hole.
There you go. Yeah. There's your Caucasian analogy.
There you go.
You can't do that to everything, all right? So just because one person, that's an exception to the rule, man. That's an exception to the rule.
I don't know why you don't think a top 5 talent like Bam shouldn't be an exception to the rule too.
Bam is shorter and he's not a puncher. I'm telling you, even though he's knocking guys out, he gets it. He gets it from angles. He surprises guys from the left-handed stance, and that's how he's able to hurt these guys. And
so, if in August of this year, Bam goes to 118 and beats a champion, you still wouldn't want to see him against Inoue at 122 at the end of the year.
Look, if he can go up and knock out a 118-pounder, then I would have to say yes. If he's knocking guys out from 108 to 118, then we're dealing with a special talent.
Maybe he goes and knocks Gallo out. Gallo's going up to 118.
Yeah,
he beats him again.
Man, but if he can do that at 118, then I would say, you know what? Bam could do anything he wants. You know, he's in the Crawford level now. Then I would start saying that's an exception to a rule. Because whenever you're dealing with a monster Inoue, with a Crawford, with a Canelo, these are exceptions, right? Bam has proven that he's had 3 exceptional years. I mean, pound for pound generational talent. But there is a cap to his momentum as well. I mean, if he can go up to 118 and knock out someone like he just did Gallo Estrada, then I'm all on board to whatever nonsense matchmaking you want to present to me.
All right. Diego Pacheco is back in action this weekend, one of the best young fighters in all of boxing. Undefeated, top 5 ranked in 3 of the 4 sanctioning bodies. He is going to take on Steven Nelson, who is an undefeated 168-pound contender. Nelson is a member of the Terence Crawford, Brian McIntyre stable out in Omaha, Nebraska. Both these guys, Sergio, have kind of followed different paths up until this point. Pacheco is the more natural prospect. He was signed by Matchroom at 17. He has been groomed for this moment, like followed all the basic steps you have to take to get to a world title shot. Where Steven Nelson turned pro kind of late. He's a U.S. Army veteran. He has not had the backing of a major promoter. He's had some injuries, some outside the ring issues. But we did see him in action just this past August. Got a knockout win on that Riyadh season card in Los Angeles. How do you see this fight playing out?
It's going to be a tricky fight for Pacheco. Pacheco, we've seen him struggle a little bit with McCelman, you know, a guy that's short, athletic, strong. Well, we're dealing with the same thing with Steven Nelson, only Steven Nelson is a better offensive fighter. Nelson throws really good body shots, and it's hard for a long-armed, tall fighter to unleash that length whenever someone's throwing sneaky body shots on the inside. Nelson has the confidence, he has the momentum, he has the camp, and he has one of the best fighters in the world that he gets to spar and get in the ring with. So, you know, I just think he can be a spoiler. He can be a spoiler. Nelson really impressed me in his last fight. And I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't know much about Steve Nelson up until that last fight in the Riyadh season where I had a study. And I'm like, man, this guy's good. This guy's good. He's a cagey, strong. He throws, you know, sharp little concise punches. Good all around, damn good fighter. And then when I seen him perform, I was really impressed. Everything but his outfit. I would say was impressive.
His outfit was fantastic. What are you talking about?
It was funny. But then when we talked to him in fighter meetings, I watch his interviews, and then I add that to what I saw. I'm really impressed with Steve Nelson. So salute to the Army veteran, because I know why he's gotten this far in this short amount of time, because the dude's a hardworking, smart guy that has a little bit of luck going for him with the team that he's surrounding himself in. So it's going to be a tricky fight for Pacheco, man.
I think if you're Nelson, you've got to find a way to get to Pacheco early, whether that means building up a big early lead or scoring an early knockout. Because in recent fights, we have seen Pacheco maybe not vulnerable, but struggle some early on. You mentioned McCallum. McCallum won some of those early rounds before fading down the stretch. Marcelo Caceres, he landed some good shots on Pacheco early on. Maciej Sulecki, I don't know if he had success, but he was hanging in there early on. Pacheco, to me, right now, is kind of a rhythm fighter. Like, when he gets into a rhythm and he catches you in kind of in that mid-range, you're dead. Like, that's when he is at his very best. And he's going to come into this fight with some height, with some reach, with some experience against some better opponents against Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson's going to have to find a way to make this fight a little bit ugly. I think he's obviously going to have to get on the inside against Pacheco. He's going to have to mix it up a little bit, I think. He's a strong guy. He's going to have to use some of that man strength against Pacheco. He's 36 years old. Pacheco's, 23? Nelson's going to have to use that physicality. I know Pacheco, when he talked to us this week, was like, I'm growing into my man strength. Well, Nelson's got it. Like, Nelson's got his man strength. And he is, a naturally... Like, he's a guy that when he was getting into boxing, he was over 200 pounds. So he's got some natural physical tools that can use to his advantage. But I think, Sergio, he's got to make this kind of a brawl on the inside as opposed to kind of the classic boxing match. Because if he lets Pacheco kind of get going and get comfortable, that's when Pacheco lands those long looping shots that have hurt a lot of guys on this level.
You're not going to see a brawl with Steven Nelson. That's the reason I was impressed with him, because he knows how to get on the inside and pick the right shots.
Maybe brawl was the wrong word, but physical.
It is the wrong word, Mr. Sports Illustrated writer. I'll give you the right word. Guerrilla tactics, guerrilla warfare. That's what he needs to do. He needs to ambush them in certain spots. He needs to make it rough, not dirty, make it rough. But then he also needs to back up and let Pacheco come to him, and then loop in shots, just like McCallum was doing against Pacheco. But there's a game plan there with that fight. If you can study a little bit of the McCallum fight, if you can study a little bit of the Caceres fight, there's a game plan there to have success against Pacheco. That's how I would fight him, at least. I would show him flashes of inside fighting, and Nelson is a hell of a body puncher. So show him flashes of that, and then take that away from Pacheco and start moving around the ring and have Pacheco come following him, just like the McCallum fight, then lead him into overhand shots, maybe even, square up on him. The thing about Nelson, he knows how to fight squared up. I think it's all those rounds that he's had, sparring with Crawford, that he doesn't fight. He doesn't quite turn southpaw, but he squares up nicely to land punches hard from both sides. And if you can do that to Pacheco and actually, get an angle and flank him and try to push the taller, lankier fighter back, you could have success doing that, because that's what I would do against a Pacheco. I wouldn't let him be on the front foot leading the way with the jab. And I definitely won't just be moving around the ring, not getting respect. It's going to be a hybrid of two different styles. And Steve Nelson, mark my words, has that ability.
I think we agree that the early part of the fight, though, is important for Nelson.
It is.
Because just Caceres, it eventually caught up to him. The power of Pacheco caught up to him. McCallum, he didn't have enough to win the second half of that fight. You look at his last fight against Sulecki, landed just a vicious body shot that knocked him out in the middle part of that fight. If you're Nelson, you got to find a way to build a lead early on. You got to make Pacheco uncomfortable. You got to take him out of his comfort zone, because once he gets comfortable.
Yeah, no, you said it. You got to build up points. You got to get the early lead, and you want to have Pacheco come into you, not desperately, but eagerly.
Yeah.
And that's when you run him into the big shots. And Nelson does have enough pop to hurt you. So if you can get Pacheco come out of his element, trying to impress a crowd in Las Vegas where he's headlining again, a lot of Southern California fans are going to be going over there. Get him out of his element, get him a little bit prideful, run into some shots, use the strategy that you have. All that's going to work in the favor of Nelson. What's going to be working against him is his age. The 36-year-old legs are going to catch up to Nelson in the second half of the fight. That's when you asked me before the show, how do you see this fight going? At first, I wanted to say knockout Pacheco, but then I said, nah, maybe decision. It's going to be a late round something. Either a decision or a late round knockout, but it's not going to be easy for Pacheco.
Did you make the reservation for Peter Luger's?
My host at Caesar's Palace has. Shout out Steve Shakarian. What a paper.